Okay, so I had to start that again as it ran out. But we were talking about how dogs understand and follow a system of quarantine when they're sick. And then
Even if they don't understand it, they do it. You know, it might just be something that's built into the system, an instinctual thing. When they get sick, they
somehow
get away
along
from
the
it.
line they've learned it. Like, I believe in ancestral memory.
Sure. So
And
you've
so
seen
it could
animals like when like birds, when a egg gets out of the nest, they go. It's an instinctual thing. They go like this. They take the egg away, and they'll still be doing it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to overinterpret it. It might be true that they understand it, but even if they don't, it's built in the system. The sad thing about people is they don't have instincts.
Well, I think instinct is ancestral memory, and we don't tend to follow our instincts. I think we would naturally have instincts, but we go against them. We learn along the way. We've been programmed not to follow them.
Yeah.
If you think about it, we get, like I was talking about how crazy it is. You go to the public library downtown here, and I mean, the homeless shelter, they'll let the people out. Well, they have to let them out, but that are staying there. But where do these people go during the day? Why don't they have a place like, what do they do when they're sick? Well, to the library or wherever. Like, I don't think they have any place for people. What if it's anything short of hospital? Where they go, they just wander around.
Yeah, they give them shelter for the night. And understand
right.
when Pauline said these people, she hangs with all sorts of people. That's just a designation. I've been doing a study of it. You know, people will say these people when it's neutral, when it's negative, and when it's positive. It's more often when it's negative, but don't go that route of ascribing any bad thoughts.
So what I was talking about was I'd noticed a little sign on the mirror of the bathroom, and I think it's still there, saying something like, if you're sick, stay home, or whatever. And okay, but how does this work for the homeless people?
They got no home.
Where are they going to go?
Yeah.
You know, stay out in the cold so that they just die out there? Rather than, they're sick, they have to be in somewhere at least warm. They're already ill.
So get a homeless shelter
gonna make
for
them have pneumonia
24/7, 52.
I mean, honestly, it doesn't
not
make any
just
sense.
for when they're sleeping.
So,
but get a different place so they can go. It's either in the same place, but so the place where they were at, there will be some vomit and Lord knows what all else. Can be. I'm not saying all or whatever. There'll be some. It's got to be cleaned out. Clean out. They move to another place. And maybe another place for another 8 hours, so that can be cleaned, right? Maybe 3 different places, either in the same location or in a different location, but within easy walking distance. I'm talking about on the same block. So yeah, I don't know what that scene is like. Let them loose, and it's raining. It's 40 below. These things happen up here.
So anyway, you go to the library, and when there's a cold going around, well, there's all of the homeless people that are there. They all have it, you know, and they're there.
Coughing
they're there at the library. And it's a funny system, you know, it's a funny society we live in when there isn't something in place for people so that normal, like, cold and flu viruses don't spread, right? If you catch a cold or a flu virus, you know that, our system is not sufficient for keeping diseases. Honestly, if you just catch a flu, you know that it's, and yet, you know, some people, if you're in management, maybe you have better sick days and stuff like that, and you don't have somebody harassing you. But I've been in places working where you get sick a couple times, and they're like, you know, gonna have to bring the shop steward in if you get sick
so
a little more,
to
you know,
Pauline,
and it's
what she's saying.
And it's like, okay, well, what do you do then, right? So then, like, in one time I was sick one day, And the people that I worked with were figuring that I had a hangover or something, I think. And so they came and they were using the chipper outside my yard. There's no reason for it because there's no trees, no work that they were doing here. They were just doing it because they thought it'd be funny, you know, to be making noise while I was. So you know what? I wasn't sick again. I was sick, but I was there. And
Spreading it around.
Spreading it around because you know what? If you're gonna treat me like that, fine. I'll if I am able to be vertical, I guess I'm gonna be there.
Yeah, so that was Jay's decision, right? We're not going to mention the name. Do you think?
I think it was D.
Yeah, it could be.
I think
You see how we're not
funny.
we're not into gossip, you know, like these people's names. There we go. These people. This one's a negative one. There's no doubt about it in this one. But it's not prejudice. They're white and all that.
I don't know. I didn't ask. I wasn't. I didn't take a sick day again.
Yeah, I know the individuals involved, and yeah.
So anyway,
it's a
and
small
I mean,
group of
I had
suspects.
paid sick days, but I mean that's a theoretical sort of thing. And some of the laborers would tell me, well, you have paid sick days. You know why? And it's like, yeah, but I can't take them. You know, other people could, but not me. I won't get away with it, you know, because I was a passive green and...
Well, you're green, you're also a blue. See, that got you in trouble. I mean, and a blue woman is not appreciated.
No, I know.
Society.
My dad didn't.
It's not
like
as
that.
bad as it used to be, but
I think I
a
would have
woman
been
who thinks for
farther
herself.
up the blue scale had it not been for my father raising me, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, can I just talk about the China and the virus? So Pauline was talking about this one person talking about it being a Chinese plot. And if we look at it this way, here it is. China looks as though it is slowing this thing down to a stop. And I'm afraid what they're going to do is the way it's looking is in Western societies, which are much more open, it's just going to rampage. So it could be that China will suffer something like 3,000 deaths, and then the rest of the world will be something like 50 million to 200 million deaths. And then all of a sudden the Chinese have been thoroughly incompetent for the first month and a half.
Where they were hiding it? Yeah.
Yeah, when they're hiding it. They're responsible for it getting loose. And then they're saying to the rest of the world, hey, you know, America in particular, you're not showing any goodwill by closing the borders. But then they've been really, really harsh. I'm not saying overly harsh, but harsh to their own population about not letting them move around.
Yeah, they had drones keeping them in and stuff.
Yeah, monitoring who's out on the street. It's amazing hypocrisy. So you know, if a person's of a slightly paranoid bent of mind, they could be saying, hey, the Chinese planned this. They knew that they'd be able to shut it down because it would be a virus that they knew how far it would extend. They got it so it would spread to the rest of the world. Then what they're going to be saying is, hey, look, our system works. Yours doesn't. It went wild and crazy in your part of the world and stuff like that. Now, I'm not of that paranoid bent of mind, but I am telling you, if things going the way it's going, are you listening, you crazy leaders of the so-called free world? This is an emergency. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I'm saying that it has the potential of killing 50 to 100 million, 200 million people, depending on what percentage gets infected, depending on you know, if it's just let loose to go wild, this is what's going to happen. And it all depends on what percentage of people. The lowest thing would be based on maybe 30% of people getting infected worldwide, and then on 2% death rate. But in China, where it's overwhelming the system, like around Wuhan, it's not a 2% death rate. It looks more like a 4% death rate. Now, China has got some facilities. Try and think of what it's going to be like, medical facilities, what it's going to be like, or what it could potentially be like. I think it's just when it hits Africa. or places in like Indonesia or stuff like that, where you got
Yeah.
in places huge overpopulation,
Well-
overcrowding, and there aren't the medical facilities. The medical facilities are going to be swamped, and that's just if the doctors are surviving. Once they start getting the stuff and getting bumped off, and nurses, then what happens? It's going to be amazing. And I say it is going to be amazing. I don't know. You leaders are going to have to show some leadership. Yes, there will be issues with people escaping the quarantine. There will be issues of people saying, "This, you're infringing on my rights, my civil rights." Well, you know, there are some rights that trump others, and the right to live, just survive, trumps the right of someone going gallivanting and doing some tourism in China or wherever, or and now in Iran. Hey, I've got itchy feet. I got to be going over there. Well, that's not much of a right. I don't think that trumps the right of, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of people to survive.
Okay, but you're assuming that the leaders of this world might actually care if large chunks of their population die. I don't think that's the case.
I don't think they care, but I'm telling you, they care about their own survival as politicians.
Yes,
And as human beings. And if this gets loose, the way it looks as though it's going to get loose, there will be people up literally in arms about it. It is going to be very destabilizing. There will be vigilante stuff. There's already signs of it. People saying to Chinese people, and now it's in the Middle East. You know what it's going to be like with people that look like they come from the Middle East? It's going to be amazing. And eventually it'll get turned on the politicians. This is the main reason why that the Chinese really don't care about their own population. The people that are the leadership there, they don't care about anyone except their own power and extending it, not just in China, but throughout the whole world. And so they don't care. But the reason why they stopped it dead in its tracks, or looks as though they're doing it, is because they know if it gets loose, they're dead. Dead meat. It's just that way. So.
Well, I don't think a lot of the population of, like, okay, the people who will be hit the hardest if viruses get out will be people like, say, I talked about the people in the homeless shelter.
Oh, it'd be awful.
They get wiped out.
Yeah.
Do people care?
It'll be old folks and old folks homes.
Yeah. Do people care if the elderly?
No.
No.
Because the coverage in the papers was, meh. You know, when it first was revealed, it's only affecting people who are over 70 years old and people with pre-existing conditions, like with diabetes. Well, you know, people with diabetes, some of those people were born with it. And, you know, diabetes, if it's the adult onset thing, I'm sorry, but it's a lifestyle choice, really.
And, well, a lot of the poor, even if it's out in, say, the general population of workers, it'd be more of the people who would get it would be the people that have to deal with people, who work with people.
Or just
so
have
customer
to,
service
or just
sort
have
of
to go
personnel.
to work. Like rich
And
people in New York
exactly.
will go up to their
So they
estates up in
won't-
Woodstock and upstate
So do
New
they
York.
care? Nah. But the people who are customer service workers, the people who are taking your money at the grocery store and greeting you with a smile at the cable company or whatever, they tend to be greens, right? And do people really care too much if some greens that they don't make a lot of money? And honestly, reds and yellows, they think greens are stupid. They think that's why they don't. They aren't as aggressive about making more money and
Imposing their will on others.
yeah,
Right.
they think that they're stupid, and that's why they end up settling for
Classic
jobs like
case
that,
of that
right?
kind of thinking is Nietzsche, right?
Sure.
He's a yellow mixed with a
Yeah.
red, and
Nope, I wouldn't say he is. I would say he's a blue mixed with a red, not a yellow at all. His sister is a yellow.
he had a way of entertaining people. But however we classify him, there's a strong component of red. And so when he's decrying the Christian slave mentality, he decries slaves. You know, he looks down on people that he would consider slaves. And you could say he's looking down at intellectual slaves, but basically he says they deserve their lot. And I don't know. I guess if you vote for Donald Trump and choose that sort of stuff, then maybe you deserve a lot. I don't know, but yeah.
Anyway. So, what I'm saying is that I don't believe that it's an accident at all that these viruses are getting out. I don't think that, I honestly don't think that our government would care if it got loose in Canada too much. I don't think they'd really bat an eye.
Well, they would
Certain
be
amount of people would
thrown
die,
out,
whatever.
and they'd be thrown out. I mean, they're a minority situation. They'd be thrown out. So.
I don't know if that's the case.
What was that?
I don't know if that's the case because they just maybe more people would get behind the right-wing government and say, yeah, we have to be more aggressive against dictatorships like China so that we keep them from killing
We don't
us
have
or
a
whatever.
right-wing
It's like
government in power, right? It's Trudeau government, so they're kind of wishy-washy in the middle.
What I'm saying is it could bring about more nationalistic tendencies and stuff like that.
Oh, it will. I mean, if it gets loose in the United States before the election, Trump's dead meat. And then who knows how they'll vote.
That's the case.
What was that?
I don't know if that's the case.
See, here's the thing. It could be Bernie Sanders. And then...
Well, nobody's going to vote for Bernie Sanders if there's trouble with foreign entities.
Well, it's just hard to say how things will develop.
Well,
I mean,
some people will. But
the Russians have stake. They're funding both Trump and using dark money. They're funding both Trump and Sanders. And what they're doing is playing both sides against the middle. They want to divide the American electorate, cause a lot of destabilization, and they don't really care much which of those dudes gets elected, because both of those guys are puppets for Putin puppets. So the real danger in the United States is the military saying, these guys, some elements in the military in the United States is generally pretty responsible. I know that is heresy to a lot of people sitting on the left wing, squatting on the left wing. I don't think they belong there. But it's actually the military is traditionally in the United States has been relatively responsible. But there would be elements in there who want to have a coup and take over. And if things get really out of control, I don't think this virus is quite as destabilizing as it like there's one from the Middle East that's awful. The death rate is incredibly high.
yeah, but if you think about our society, if you look at it, if you try to step out of it for a minute and just look at how the Canadian and the United States, how they really don't care enough about the health of the citizens. So, I mean, we were watching a show about the water that they were drinking, whatever. What was that? You didn't like it.
Which water? How recently was it?
It was a while ago, but
Okay.
What's his name? That guy that you don't like.
Who, David Suzuki?
No, you don't like David Suzuki?
Here's what one guy who sat on the left wing, he's a former communist, I think he gave it up, said about David Suzuki. So this guy was Japanese. He's a little bit jealous of David Suzuki, from what I can tell. He said, David Suzuki's a bit of I think Silas pointed this out too. David Suzuki's a bit of a hypocrite because he's talking about global warming and he's jetting all over the world doing these sorts of things. So, yeah.
So anyway, there's that. But no, like there's all sorts of examples of water being contaminated, like
well, there's no doubt about that.
like what's that? Anyway, and plastic pollution everywhere, and all sorts
Especially in the oceans.
we
That's
watched a
very
show
bad.
about
How does
Teflon.
plastic make it in the ocean? Well, they're I guess they're submerging garbage and stuff like that. And I don't think they'd be strict controls because who's to complain? Well,
Yeah.
a bunch of bottom feeders down in the
And
ocean.
well, I mean, they'll do things like we watched a show about the nuclear waste that was getting buried, and then it ended up leaking out or whatever.
Again, who's
And-
really? Does someone actually like a forensic archaeologist go digging down to see if they've actually buried it according to
Yeah.
standards?
And so there's all this, right? There's loads and loads of examples of how the government doesn't care about the health of the citizens. It's in a capitalist country. Really, I mean, we're encouraged to eat lots and lots of sugar and lower our immunity, and then we were wiping out.
Encouraged is a mild word for it. It's just
It's in
that sort
everything.
of stuff. It's pushed in
And,
your face
yeah.
if you watch TV.
And so you're addicted to it, and it's everywhere. So I mean, it'd be like if they filled all the food with cocaine and then said, oh well, it's up to you if you eat it or not. And it's like, well. So anyway, so what I'm saying is our society has actually made it so that especially the poor are eating much more sugar and stuff like that, but how the population doesn't have as strong of immunity, and so we're more likely to get sick. There's like our probiotic bacteria are wiped out, and I mean, they were literally feeding us Roundup. And I just thought that it was in the Roundup ready crops you had to worry about, and so just avoid the genetically modified food and you're okay. But no, they were using Roundup as a seed desiccant. So
As
it
a
was on
desiccant. That's
everything.
whoever developed that out
Everything.
there.
So-
When do you think they started developing? If you're still alive, you poser, you stupid poser.
So I mean,
Because we
literally.
all suffer if our
Oh,
health
yeah.
starts suffering.
Yeah. So there's that, and then I mean the BT toxin is okay as long as you don't have holes in your digestive tract and stuff like that. And then the dairy, what was it? That dairy we were watching on that same Immunology or whatever.
Yeah, that was a pretty good
How that
program.
gives you leaky gut, and so it's like okay, so then you can have problems with the BT toxin. If you have leaky gut, you're gonna, right? So
That's scary. I
Yeah.
mean, you're going to get cancer that way. If
for sure. So the government has actually been, well, through, like in the United States, through the FDA or whatever, they've been literally poisoning their citizens. Literally.
Their own citizens.
I'm not saying
Fun
this
times, yeah.
for shock value or anything. I'm not
It shouldn't
over-exaggerating.
be a shock. Yeah, that's a funny sort of
So,
thing. Yeah.
do they care if their citizens die? A number of them? Whatever.
If it's
As
a
long
small
as-
enough number so that the majority doesn't get up in arms, they don't care. They're perfectly willing to.
I mean, they're
things
they're
go.
happy if you're sick as a citizen in a capitalist society. They're happy if you're sick. So, in Canada, in the United States, they haven't been taking Lyme disease seriously. They're not really even working on solving the problem at all, as far as I can see. They're not even acknowledging that there is a problem.
Their way of
for the
solving
most
the
part.
problem is sweeping the dirt
And,
under the rug, right?
So if you have that, then you're going to have a whole wide range of problems that, well, there's a prescription for that, right?
Mhm.
And so it's
Yeah, so
If
they end
you're-
up treating the symptoms, right? I'm afraid there's a lot of things that are Lyme disease related, or else things that are things that are like Lyme disease that they haven't even recognized.
Yeah.
But what they end up doing is treating the symptoms. So that's what the doctors thought that they were doing with my cancer, right?
Yeah.
So one doctor was saying, "You've got a kidney problem," and I said, "And you better take care of that." And I said, I'm thinking to myself, I already told you I've got a kidney problem. I have a high creatinine thing. You know what I'm saying? So, but he's saying, you better take care of the kidney problem. To me, why I was asking him about it was, he was a retired doctor, was, I know it's a kidney problem, but I know there's an underlying condition. I know I'm not the sort of person who'd have a diet where you'd expect I'd have a kidney problem. The underlying condition was multiple myeloma, and that's, all other things being equal, what kills you is your kidney fails. Too much calcium in your blood from your bones breaking down, basically from within. So that's what doctors, especially GPs, are wonderful at doing, is treating symptoms, right?
Yeah.
But if you've got an underlying condition, like with me, when they finally diagnosed it, this was the 11th doctor down the line, they were saying, you're terminal. Luckily enough, they were wrong. You're terminal, right? Because they wanted to treat symptoms. Of course, sometimes, like here's a symptom. I'm reporting a lot of symptoms. That's what happens when you hypercalcemic. Too much calcium in your system, not just in your blood.
Okay, but what I'm saying anyway is that it could be done. The whole release in China could very well have been, it could have been released by the Americans or the whoever. It could have been, you don't know who it's released by, and they may not have, whoever released it may not have that much interest in the health of their own, many of the people in the society that they're working for. So
I think it's pretty safe to say it wasn't the South Koreans or the Italians, if indeed something like that happened. The Americans are actually keeping themselves healthy, and they had a plan right away. No travel to and from China,
and
so they're looking
and
like
that
suspects.
doesn't mean that it's not them.
Well, I don't think it was.
You
If
don't
anyone
know
did, it would be
who
the
released
Chinese. But looking at the way it's developed,
It looks like it, but you don't know. And the fact of the matter is, you have to expect that this sort of thing is going to happen and keep happening and keep happening. So if we don't have an exit strategy, if we don't have some sort of emergency plan, then we're just foolish.
we are
Absolutely foolish.
Here's the thing. What they're working
We
on.
may as well have given it to ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've got people working. And this has been like in the Cold War. I don't know how far it goes back, probably before World War II. Working on getting stuff that is passed on by people that are asymptotic. It looks as though it might be that, in other words, you don't have symptoms. It might be the case with this thing. They're not sure. So we're going to have to face the possibility of something like that getting loose, or something like that being loosed on the world. And we got no way of dealing with it, because automatically they're saying, everyone's saying, all the people in power, the newspapers and all this sort of stuff, the reds and the yellows who spread their propaganda, they're saying, the one thing we don't want to do is overreact. And I'm going, you've got to get ready and look for the worst possible scenario, which is that it is bioterror or some sort of bio warfare agent that's gotten loose. And you've got to be thinking about the possibility that it's being spread by people that are asymptotic, and that it's very, very catchy, So it is not looking good. I mean, we'll survive this. I mean, lots of people won't. I stand a good chance of getting whacked by it if I catch it. But I was just as concerned about SARS when it was happening.